You know what really makes us mad is wasting money on CDs with only one or two good songs.
Yeah. Tell them about punk.
Posers. Welcome to punklottopod. I'm your co-host Justin Hensley, and it's just me today because today we're doing not a regular episode of the show. Between last Thursday and today, I've been nonstop either go, sick, or work, and go again. So we really did not have much time to record an episode this week. It's been a mess. The wife and I got stomach viruses that took us both out for days, and got a new car last week, so all the process of getting a new car, and then it had a few things that need to be worked on, and planning all that stuff, and going to my job, and it's just been a lot lately. So we weren't able to do an episode, but we are going to provide for you today a sneak peek behind the curtain of what it's like in our Patreon bonus audio. So over on our Patreon, for $1, you get access to all of our weekly bonus audio. That includes whatever Dylan and I record that week, plus a new release Friday bonus audio that I always do every week, and any other random ideas that I come up with, special side podcasts that I do, Moon Pies for Misfits videos where I try out different snacks and drinks, lots of different stuff. So I'm hoping that for $1 it intrigues you enough. But if none of that does, then this teaser should sweeten the pot. So what we're going to do is we're going to replay the bonus episode that we did with Dave Brown that corresponded with our Pretty in Pink soundtrack episode. So we did this, I want to say last year, and we had a great time. We covered the soundtrack on the show, and then over on the Patreon, we reviewed the movie. So this corresponds with that bonus episode. And I really hope you enjoy this. This is really fun. If you hadn't heard the Pretty in Pink one, or you haven't listened to it in a while, go back and check that one out. I'll have a link to it in the show notes. And if you're more interested in what's going on the Patreon, I just recorded something called The Comps That Made Us. It's a series I've been kicking around in my head where I take different compilations that I've listened to growing up and, analyzing them and talking about them. So I put the first one of those up now. It is on This Is Solid State Volume 2, which was a metal and hardcore compilation. My first exposure to that type of music, really. So I had really fun doing the notes for that and recording and everything. So hopefully you'll enjoy it. All of that's on patreon.com/punklottopod. You can head over to all of our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at punklottopod. Email punklottopod@gmail.com, and our voicemail line, which is 202-688-PUNK. But yeah, we should be back next week. Dylan and I are already planning on recording this week, so no worries there. And I really hope you enjoy this conversation we had with Dave about the movie. And I really do hope you go back and check out the Pretty in Pink soundtrack episode we did too. So thank you, everyone, and we will see you next week.
What's up, patrons? I'm Dylan. That's Justin. And that's Dave Brown. And we're doing a movie. What are we doing today?
I let Dylan drive this one for a change, so.
Doesn't work. There's a reason I don't.
We're doing a Masterpunk theater for the first time with a guest.
This is a first Patreon with a guest.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so, yes, I came up with this idea after I forgot to turn off the $10 part on the Patreon. And Justin was like, "You want a refund?" I was like, "No, I plan on doing this like 4 times a year and anyway, so you guys get a lot too much of me every year." But as we were just kind of talking, I was like, what would be cool is to do this soundtrack and this movie at the same time. And thankfully, Justin liked the idea. So here we are to talk about one of the best movies of the 1980s, in my humble opinion. Quite possibly the best John Hughes movie, Pretty in Pink.
Yeah. Came out in 1986, which we recently just did like an 86 chart dive because I pulled that up and I was like, oh, we've just talked about all this stuff. But I think we
should have pulled up movies from 86 to talk about. Didn't even think about that.
That'd been interesting. Yeah, that'd been a little different.
Let's do that right now.
Yeah, we could.
Well, not you, Dylan. Your computer's going to
don't crash your computer, Dylan.
Get your phone out, sir.
You hear a whirring in the background. It's getting real hot in here.
It's heating up the room. You know,
Bless your heart.
Rate Your Music also has a movie version of their site, so I'm going to look at that and see what they show.
Ooh.
Oh.
Also, you can check it on Letterboxd, too.
Oh, yeah, Letterboxd is actually probably way cooler and way easier to use than whatever this weird site's going to be.
I mean, I'm just going to Google 1986 movies. So.
I'm going to go to the Letterboxd. That's on the phone. Because the Cinemos is loading so slowly.
All right.
A fun year in movies, actually.
Wow. Yeah. So let's see. So I Googled Letterboxd and then got a little search bar for the website and typed in 1986. And let's see here. Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Yeah. Kind of a John Hughes movie. He wrote it. He didn't direct it, right? Or is that one he actually directed too?
I think
he directed that one.
I think he directed that one.
Yeah, he directed. Yeah.
Blue Velvet.
That's my favorite Brat Pack movie.
Yeah.
Ferris Bueller.
That and The Fly.
Aliens.
Yeah, Aliens. What else?
Stand By Me. Top Gun. Ooh, we got some Tom Cruise in here.
Howard the Duck.
Oh, hell yeah. Leah Thompson. That movie's terrible, but she's great in it.
She's kind of great in everything.
Yeah, she really is. I'm sure she has like a TV show where she's like the mother of orphans or something like that. She's like their stepmother or some adopted mother.
Interesting.
But it's like her real daughter. I don't know. It's it's like a freeform Disney family show, which is what she's been doing probably for like 10 years.
Wow.
Heavy Metal Parking Lot. There's a good.
Oh yeah.
That's a good Masterpunk theater contender. It's actually kind of a few movies that I feel like would fit. Ferris Bueller, I feel like this soundtrack is kind of puts it in our lane. There was something else that was more obvious. Sid Nancy.
Yeah, it's a big one.
You know, that movie made me kind of dislike the Sex Pistols. I was like, wow, y'all are terrible people.
Yeah, I tried to watch that movie one time and I was like, I can't finish this just because like the version of the characters in a movie, they were just so grating that I was like, I can't finish this.
Yeah. I think probably watching like a Sex Pistols documentary is kind of what built a lot of my interest in them early on, because it was soon enough into being like, it was early into being into punk and being kind of into the Sex Pistols. And then like, I feel like watching that documentary about like just one of those, whatever documentaries that does their whole story. I'm like, yeah, they kind of stink.
You know, I had a similar experience watching a Ramones documentary where I came out of it going, wow, these people all kind of suck.
The Ramones, I think I didn't know enough of the shitty things about them until I was so far into their music that it's one of those like, wish I'd known these things sooner.
Yeah.
Particularly Johnny.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah, but that gets it all in, not to get deep here, but that gets into the question of art versus artist. And can you like someone's art and dislike either them as a person or them as their beliefs and whatnot? And I think that's something that happens far too often, where people just like find something they don't like about somebody and all of a sudden they decide to just completely crap all over everything they've ever done. And it's not that life is fair, but that is definitely not fair. Not that I'm defending Johnny Ramone or anything, because by all rights he's an absolute, or was, I think he's dead, douche.
Yeah, yeah, they're all gone.
Yeah, I've probably talked about this on the show before. I feel like it's just one of those things where it's like, if I can't stop it from happening,
like retroactively,
you know, like it's not like a time travel situation. Like, and when you're dealing with people that are like have had such cultural significance, where it's like, yeah, like John Lennon's a piece of shit, but like whatever. Like his influence on, you know, I'm not invested in the Beatles, but his influence on music and culture is like, it's so significant that it's just like, we can't not have that. We're not going to throw that away, you know? I don't know. Like,
Right.
And it's one of the, and it's too easy to just go further and further back into time and being like, well, everyone sucked to a point.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, to a point, kind of everyone does suck, and everyone's had moments where they've done really stupid things that they probably regret, and the idea of painting someone's entire life by their worst night or their worst day is kind of crappy. I mean, don't we believe in redemption anymore?
Yeah. And I mean, you know, to go further down the cancel culture sucks track, I say all of my caveats for like all of the old culture pop culture that I'm interested in, where it's like the people were demonstrably bad people, like all that to say, like that doesn't mean that I don't feel like we shouldn't hold people accountable today. Like that's why I say, like, if I can't fix it with a time machine, I'm not, you know, if I have to have a time machine to fix it, I'm not worried about it. But like there's things that I can do now that don't require me to go, you know, bend the laws of time and space.
Yeah.
Like you can hold people accountable now. So that's kind of where I sit on canceling people.
That is fair, and that's a debate that no one is ever going to solve, I think, or at least certainly not us right now.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is a weird way to start a Pretty in Pink
I know, right?
movie
That
discussion.
being said, actually, I think it does bear somewhat on our discussion of this movie, because I had some thoughts along those lines while watching this movie and how it fits into the broader context of the movies of the time period. So we can get into that stuff when we actually get into the movie. But
Yeah. Let's see. Needless to say, 86, surprisingly good year for movies.
A couple others that I just wanted to point out real quick, if I may. Star Trek 4, otherwise known as the one with the whales.
I was going to say, is that the one with the whales?
Yes, that movie is outstanding. In the last 2 years, I've really gotten back into Star Trek, and I love that whole franchise, and that's a fantastic movie. It's a great fish out of water story too. What else? Maximum Overdrive is one of the creepiest movies. If you've never seen this, the whole thing is about a truck. No, wait, that's Duel. I always get Maximum Overdrive and Duel mixed up. Is Maximum Overdrive the one with the AC/DC soundtrack?
Yes, it is.
yeah.
Okay, so this one gave us Who Made Who, which just right there is good enough for its existence.
Speaking of canceled people and also movies that could work for a Masterpunk Theater, Labyrinth.
Yeah. I mean, Bowie
who
is
was
like,
canceled?
he's soft canceled.
He's one of those, anytime you talk about Bowie, there's always someone who's like, but it's like, yeah, he did.
He slept with a teenager. Like that kind of the people bring that stuff up. It's like, yeah, he did.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, if you were a teenager and you had the chance to sleep with David Bowie, I mean, would you say no? Probably not. Let's be honest.
They've talked to the woman who it was, and she's always been like, it was a loving relationship. It was a very nice relationship. So it's always like, all right, okay, I guess it's
Yeah, I mean,
it's a weird gray area.
Someone not wanting to say that it was a bad thing doesn't mean that it wasn't a bad thing.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Very true.
The person who experienced it. But we can move on. Big Trouble in Little China.
That was the one I was going to bring up. I love what did I say? Big Lover in Little
Big
China.
Lebowski.
Big Lebowski in Little China.
That would be a good movie too.
You know, they've talked about The Rock starring in that, like a remake of that movie for years now. It wouldn't work the same way. Unless he was doing that, what was his name? Jack Burton, like that.
It could work.
He has to play it the same way.
He has to play it the same way. Yeah. He has to be an idiot who doesn't actually like contribute to any of the, success of the mission or whatever. Like,
Which I don't think.
The Rock, I feel like The Rock could play that. I don't think that a big studio would want him to play it that way.
Yeah.
Is the problem.
Well, I mean, it's going to have The Rock, so it's going to make him boat ton of money no matter what.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's one of those few people in the world who is generally overall kind of beloved. I think at this point there are only two people that I really know that I can think of in the world that almost everyone agrees on that they like, if not love. Dolly Parton and The Rock. Betty White was in that list, but sadly she has passed away. So instead of having three people everyone agrees on, we now only have two.
And Molly Ringwald.
Oh, she's Molly Ringwald rules.
I think even like I've seen her in things, more recent things, and I never know it's her. Like she's very much like her fellow Brat Pack castmate Anthony Michael Hall. Like they don't look like what they did at all anymore. Meanwhile, like Emilio Estevez still kind of looks like Emilio Estevez.
Well, yeah, he and Charlie Sheen just have tremendous genes, and considering all the things that they have done to their bodies over the last 40 years, it's amazing that they've aged as well as they have. But I'm actually going to counter, as someone who literally grew up watching Molly Ringwald movies, every time I see her in something, I'm like, that's Molly Ringwald. She's in Riverdale. She plays Archie's mom. Oh. And every time she's on, I'm like, that is Molly Ringwald.
I've never watched Riverdale, so...
It is, quick side note, it's fun, but it has jumped the shark like 14 times, and it is, at this point, it does it on purpose because it's so wacky.
It's a CW show about Archie.
Yeah.
It's got to jump the shark.
Yeah,
oh, yeah.
Archie jumped the shark.
Yes.
Yeah, Betty and Veronica are still interested in him after all this time.
Well, I mean, when you see the guy who plays him, you're like, okay, yes, I can see why.
Well, what's weird about the Riverdale is they were like, "Hey, let's make Archie Twin Peaks." Is the weird part about it? It's like, okay,
But yeah, it was loosely based on one of the many iterations of the Archie comics. There was one that got real serious, and so it was kind of loosely based on that. But the first few seasons really reminded me a lot of Pretty Little Liars in the way that it was this murder mystery kind of stuff, and it's really dark. And then it's just gotten super wacky, and it has tied it directly into the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina from Netflix, which was a just tremendous show. And they in fact had Sabrina on this season on Riverdale. That was great seeing her come back. But yeah, it's no one cares, but it's fun.
We're continuing to refuse to actually talk about this movie.
So let me ask, since this is something that you often ask your guests or you talk about, prior to this episode, what is y'all two's experience with Pretty in Pink?
Dylan, you go first.
I actually have not seen this one. I've never really been into a lot of the Brat Pack movies. I've seen 16 Candles. I've seen the big one, the
Breakfast
one
Club.
Breakfast Club. Duh. I don't know why I lost that title. Incidentally, Justin pointed it out to me earlier that we are recording this on Breakfast Club Day. This is the date where they're in detention.
Yeah.
Yes. God, that's another great movie. That actually also has a okay soundtrack. It's got a couple really good songs on it. It's got the Simple Minds song, and then it has a Wang Chung song that's pretty good.
I'm trying to think what are officially considered the Brat Pack movies. Like, I mean, if Ferris Bueller counts, I do like that one.
So
St. Elmo's Fire as well.
I actually had like a little bit about that in my notes. I was like, what does count as a personally? Does Ferris Bueller count as a Brat Pack movie? Because it doesn't really feature anybody from any of these movies. To me, the Brat Pack movies are if it features one of the Breakfast Club, actors in a John Hughes, and maybe two. Maybe you need two. I don't know.
Does Weird Science count?
See, that's what I'm like. There's only one of them in there.
Yeah.
Well, there actually is a Wikipedia page on the Brat Pack, and it has a filmography. So if you want to, I can run down this list real quick.
Which ones are official?
The Outsiders from 1983. And talk about a movie that has a cast that like everyone on there went on to be famous, except for like Ralph Macchio or the guy who played Stay Gold. What the kid who was anyway.
The one who gets burned.
Yes,
Pony Boy.
Pony Boy. Yes, thank you.
No,
he did not
Pony
have
Boy.
as great of a career. Class. I don't know this movie.
Yeah.
Let's see, 16 Candles.
Yeah.
Oxford Blues. The Breakfast Club. St. Elmo's Fire. Pretty in Pink. Blue City. About Last Night. Wisdom. What?
What are these movies?
Yeah. Fresh Horses. What the hell? Betsy's Wedding and Hail Caesar. I mean, these all were, well, Hail Caesar's from 94. It's got Anthony Michael Hall, Robert Downey Jr., Samuel L. Jackson, Judd Nelson. Oh, that's a cast. Okay.
So what makes it a Brat Pack movie if there's more than
one of the Brat Pack, I think is maybe what makes it official.
I think so. Not that there's an actual definitive list or anything.
Because I feel like people like Ferris Bueller as being a John Hughes, like I feel like it's very much in the same like teen movie kind of mentality, like filmography of the 80s. I feel like that fits. Like I would say Anything is a Brat Pack, even though it's not.
It's like, neither a John Hughes movie nor a Brat Pack member.
Yeah, none of those actors are Brat Pack, but it's like adjacent to that. It's so much in the same vein.
I would argue that it's in the same vein, but it is not a Brat Pack movie because the thing about to make something an actual Brat Pack movie, I think it does have to have certain specific cast members.
Yeah.
And which is pretty much everyone in the Breakfast Club and St. Elmo's Fire. I think that sums it up. And to some extent, the people and the outsiders. But really, you focus around Breakfast Club and St. Elmo's Fire, that gets just about everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, those are the key members. Yeah. So, Dylan, you said you hadn't seen this one before.
No, this one I've just never seen. I don't know why. I've just never caught it on VH1 at the right time, I guess.
I was gonna say that I have seen it before. I don't think it's been 10 years since I've watched it. I definitely remember watching it in my old apartment and before I got married. And this year will be my 8th anniversary. So it's either 9 or 10 years since I've seen it. It was on Netflix, I think, and that's why I watched it. Because I always had like strong opinion. Like I always liked The Breakfast Club a lot. So I was like, I'll watch this one, and really liked it. Like it's really, really great. Dave, when did you first see it?
Oh, I probably saw it in 1987. I know I did not see it in the theaters, so I saw it on HBO, and I was hooked from that moment on. I saw The Breakfast Club the same way. And in fact, I remember being in like 5th grade and having discussions about The Breakfast Club, which probably a 5th grader should not be watching. But there was one of the best days at school was the day after the very first broadcast airing of The Breakfast Club, where they had to do these terrible overdubs of the curse words. And it was hysterical, and we were all laughing about it, how bad it was. But yeah, I've pretty much since almost day one have loved this movie. And then when I got into high school and I got into punk and post-punk and all that stuff, it took on a whole new meaning, because not only was it's beloved as just a Gen X 80s film, but then for everyone who was involved in any of those, subcultures or anything, it was like, okay, not only is this a movie about our generation, this is a movie about us, about the weirdos, the people who get picked on, and having gone to school at a time when you did still get picked on for listening to punk rock. Like my high school in Florida, I often described to people as it's like a combination of the schools in Pretty in Pink, The Breakfast Club, and Pump Up the Volume. So it was not fun to be there and to be into punk and any of that stuff. And all the weirdo kids we were crapped on, and I watched a friend of mine get beaten up. One kid got spit on a number of times. It's good times. So so there was so much of this film that resonated with me in a whole new way once I became a teenager.
Should we run through like the basic outline of the movie, or do you want to go kind of scenes? Like, how do we want to do this one?
I think if we do kind of an overarching. So and I can kind of talk about this if you guys want. The film centers around the main character, Andy. She is from the poor side of town. She is a budding fashion designer because she makes all her own clothes. She has a kick-ass car. I can't remember what that thing is called, but
a Volvo. I think it's probably like an 1800 P1800 or something. It's a late 60s Volvo.
Is it really a Volvo?
Do you get a shot of it? I only see
yeah.
like the side, really, most of the time.
Yeah. Okay. There's the picture of it.
No. Sorry, it's a Carmen. It's a Carmen.
Carmagia. Yeah, the Volkswagen Carmagia. Oh, those are great cars. I knew people when I was in high school who had these. They're notoriously not stable vehicles at all. But damn, those are cool looking. And now, if you get in a car wreck in this, you're screwed. This is death trap right here. So
58 actually, really ahead of its time in terms of design.
So she has a best friend. Andy is played by Molly Ringwald. She has a best friend named Ducky, and he is played by what's his name? John Cryer. Interesting side note: that was almost played by Robert Downey Jr.
And Charlie Sheen.
Almost considered. Was it Charlie Sheen? I thought it was someone else was considered for it.
Charlie Sheen was considered. Oh no, Charlie Sheen was considered for the role of
Blaine.
Yeah, I kept in my notes. I could not remember his name was Blaine, so I just call him Andrew McCarthy in my notes the entire time.
Blaine? That's not a name. It's a major appliance. So
I was gonna say it's funny that you didn't remember his name. They have a whole line about it.
Yeah.
He, John Cryer's character was almost played by
Anthony Michael Hall.
It was Michael Hall, yeah.
And he turned it down because he didn't want to be typecast, which if he'd played that role again, it would have been just another version of that character he's already played twice.
Right, because he had such a stellar career after The Breakfast Club. Anyway.
he has a TV. Was he Dead Like Me? Is that his show? Or Dead Zone?
Yeah, but that was so many years later.
Yeah.
But
he doesn't look like that. Well, obviously, he doesn't look like that guy that kid anymore. But
so Ducky is madly in love with Andy. Andy works at a record store, which is actually the famed Wax Trax Records in Chicago. That's what they base off of. I think it might have even been filmed there. And the
exterior was filmed in Santa Monica.
Okay.
I don't know about the interior.
Okay. I know it was based on Wax Trax.
I assume the interior would have been a soundstage, but
yeah, it's called Tracks in the movie.
In the film, yes. Yeah. So then Andy's boss is played by Annie Potts. Her name is Iona. Annie Potts is amazing. She was also in Ghostbusters. That one of my favorite lines is that when the phone rings, she's all mad at Bill Murray, picks up, Ghostbusters, what do you want? Oh, it's good shit.
She answers the phone that way too in the movie. She says like, "What do you want?" when she picks the phone up at one point. I think she's talking to that Terrence guy.
Yeah. When am I not into bondage? Since the night I spent the night tied up in the backseat of your car. Oh, so good. Harry Dean Stanton.
She was the voice of Bo Peep too, wasn't she?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Designing Women.
Yeah.
Yeah. Annie Potts rules.
She's great.
So the rest of the cast, we had Harry Dean Stanton plays Jack, which is Molly Ringwald, Andy's dad. And he's just Harry Dean Stanton, and he's amazing.
For Masterpunk Theater callbacks, Repo Man's Harry Dean Stanton.
We're 2 out of 4 movies, right? With Harry Dean Stanton now.
Yeah.
Have we done 4 movies
For
Masterpunk Theater?
We did Jack Frost.
Yeah.
We
Germs, this,
Yeah.
Repo Man.
I think that's it.
Or not Germs, the Western
No, Nora,
Civilization.
Nick and Nora. So we've done more.
Nick and Nora, okay. 2 out of 5. All right, we need to get some more Harry Dean Stanton movies.
Yeah.
He was in a great Dwight Yoakam video that was from the Gone album, I think. I'd have to look. Dwight Yoakam, by all accounts, terrible human being, tremendous musician.
I've never heard anything about him specifically as a person other than his, like, he has some pretty conservative views.
I've just heard he's an ass and a jerk, which...
He might just be an ass.
Yeah. Which
Good actor.
Oh my God, Sling Blade. Oh, so good. I could quote so many inappropriate lines from that movie. It is. So anyway, back onto this. So we have one other major character, which is Steph, played by Mr. Ultron himself, James Spader. And that hair, man, that hair in that movie. Wow.
Every time I watched it today with my wife, and every time he was on the screen, she would say something about his hair. She was like, how did he get his hair that fluffy? I'm like, shampooed every day, hair dry, mousse.
Yeah. You forgot Andrew McCarthy.
Oh no, we mentioned him. I think.
We mentioned him. Yeah.
Yeah. There were a couple other standouts. Dweezil Zappa has a small part. He's great in that.
That's two Dweezil Zappa appearances in Masterpunk Theater now.
Nice.
Because he was in Jack Frost.
He's in Jack Frost. Yeah.
All three of the Zappas were in Drac Frost is a different movie.
Also, Andrew Dice Clay plays the bouncer of the club that they hang out at.
The Dice Man.
Oh man. See, okay, I actually have fond memories of Andrew Dice Clay because I remember watching the MTV Awards live where he went off and did a very foul comedy segment that he got banned. It was so hilarious. But his shtick cracks me up because he's just standing there doing his little arm gestations and all the things, and it's but I know nothing about him beyond those couple of things and that one movie he did, which was not very good.
He was also in that Lady Gaga movie. The what's his name? Oh, why can't I think of in the Shallow song? That movie, the remake.
Star is Born.
Star is Born. He's in it. He's her dad.
Weird. I
never recognize it. Well, because he's not wearing sunglasses and a giant leather jacket. Like in any movie he's in, but.
So basically, James Spader and Andrew McCarthy's character are rich, and the rich kids don't like the poor kids, and it's really segregated in their school, especially for being a completely white school. But again, this is 1986, so we'll just leave it at that. James Spader's character desperately wants to hook up with Molly Ringwald's character, like super bad. He's wanted to bone her for years, and she's having none of it. She knows he's a douche.
He seems like he's in a different movie than everyone else. He seems like he's in like a Wall Street type movie or like Less Than Zero, like a Bret Easton Ellis movie.
Let's see what I'm trying to think of other major pop points. Andrew McCarthy's character Blaine likes Molly Ringwald. They end up going on some dates. He asks her to the prom, and then his parents are super judgmental, so things don't go well, and he tells her he's already asked somebody else, but we're getting way ahead of ourselves. So this movie was actually written by John Hughes. He did not direct it, but he picked out the director, which is, I can't pronounce the guy's last name, Howard Deutsch, I think is how it's pronounced.
That's how I would say it.
Yeah. Howard is, just for those who are curious, married to Leah Thompson. She comes back up. And they're the parents of Zoe Deutsch, who is a now relatively famous actress. Her sister, Madeline, as well, apparently does some acting. But
they're on that TV show I was talking about with Leah Thompson. I don't know what that show's called, but they've got a show.
This was... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say the director also did a couple other John Hughes movies. He directed Some Kind of Wonderful and The Great Outdoors. Do we consider The Great Outdoors a Brat Pack movie?
I can't remember who's in that.
Is Uncle Buck a Brat Pack movie? I was just thinking of the other John Hughes movies.
Yeah. So Howard Deutsch, this is also the first film he directed. I watched all the bonus features on the DVD this weekend, so that's why I know so much of this great information.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, that was my phone. And I think did I miss any major before we kind of dig into things? Anything?
Yeah. Lauren Schuler Donner produced this movie. The late wife of Richard Donner, but she is what I know her from is the producer on all of the X-Men movies.
Oh,
she's like the lead producer on those movies, and it's kind of like, are you the reason why they're so up and down?
There's I think many reasons why those movies are up and down, but there are a couple that are outstanding.
Yeah, for sure, and then some that are horrendous.
Yes.
So we're going to avoid talking about any of the soundtrack, really, because then we won't have anything to talk about on the main episode. So
I will say, I think the use of music in this movie is phenomenal.
Oh,
the way they place things, and yeah, it's just really, really good. And John Hughes is such a huge part of that. He was such an interesting character that he became this recluse after a while. And there was actually a documentary made about him, people trying to find him. And they showed up at his house. They left what they had filmed, and they were like, "We would love to interview you. Here's this documentary we've made, all these people who love you." Apparently, he'd never watched it and sent it back to them.
Oh, wow.
Weird guy.
Yeah, it's weird. I'm like, why did he... I never understood why he stopped. I mean, I don't know.
What was, where does his filmography end?
With, like, Baby's Day Out or something like that. Like,
Yeah.
maybe, like, that third Home Alone.
Yeah, his films got younger and younger and younger. So, I mean, he did also Uncle Buck, National Lampoon's Vacation.
He's got some other weird credits, like, apparently he did the story on Drill Bit Taylor in 2008. Weird. He did write some other things. Made in Manhattan, he did the story. He didn't write the script, though.
Home Alone.
Yeah, he did the Home Alone movies. Dennis the Menace.
Curly Sue.
He did a lot of Disney stuff. Flubber, 101 Dalmatians, Miracle on 34th Street.
I mean, this guy's filmography is unbelievable.
Yeah, like you've heard of almost every one of his movies.
Yeah.
He wrote Dutch. That's funny. Yeah, and then he like stopped and he had a heart attack in 2009 and died. And yeah, it's just interesting. He kind of just like disappeared in the mid 90s though, or late 90s rather.
Yeah.
He stopped directing.
Kind of really disappeared, like kind of faded from public eye in like 94.
Yeah, his last directorial role is Curly Sue.
Has production credits for like because the company that he owned produced like 101 Dalmatians and Flubber and Home Alone 3. I mean, he didn't really have anything to... I mean, I guess they say he wrote Home Alone 3.
Yeah.
But I wonder if he gets a writing credit because he came up with the idea. I doubt he was actually involved in the writing of it.
I don't know, this Wikipedia says he was the writer. I don't know. Yeah, I like his stuff. I like most of his stuff.
So the
Weird
thing I
Science
think
is
about
fun. Pretty in Pink is fun.
Yeah.
Ferris Bueller's is really good. Planes and Trains and Automobiles is
yeah. All the
fun.
John Candy
the
stuff.
Home Alone movies are fun. Yeah, I don't know what happened with him.
one of the things I think he did that's real important is he was one of the first people to really take teenagers seriously, because these teen films they take teenagers seriously. They take their emotions, their points of view, and everything. It actually really focuses on teens without making fun of them. And I mean, one could argue that maybe the Rebel Without a Cause was kind of the first film to ever do that. But this was kind of groundbreaking stuff, because in the 80s, kids were kind of shit on. I mean, especially teenagers. Adults always took adult side against the kids, always. And unfortunately, as a generation, I think we overcorrected on that. But this is not a parenting podcast, so we won't talk about that. But it really, those films, 16 Candles, Breakfast Club, Weird Science, Pretty in Pink, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, to some Kind of Wonderful, not as much because it was at the tail end of that run. But those films were so incredibly important to everyone of my generation growing up in the 80s, because it really felt like, okay, here's a guy who not only gets us, but isn't talking down to us. And this is really, it feels like someone is advocating, maybe it's not the right word, but is taking us seriously. And that was kind of cool. And I mean, teenagers, there's so many markets where opinions of teenagers and everything is taken completely seriously, and maybe too much so. But it was very novel at the time. And I don't think that can be overstated or understated. And also, these films ended up influencing a whole couple of generations worth of filmmakers. There would not have been Heathers without these movies. I don't think there would have been Pump Up the Volume. You wouldn't have had Clueless. You wouldn't have had any number of movies, even that come out now. 10 Things I Hate About You wouldn't have happened without these films. And the other thing that I think is really good, especially in Pretty in Pink, is you've got a main character who is a woman, and she is a strong woman who stands up for herself. Yeah, she has troubles and she gets emotional like anyone would, but she also at points does not take anyone's shit.
That's one of the things I really liked about her character is that she seemed really together, as much together as someone who's like mom abandoned her and her dad, you know, and like she's like the artsy kid, the artsy poor kid in a rich kid's school. Like there's a line about her like attending the school based on her grades because she doesn't actually live within like the, close enough to the school just to automatically that's her school. Mm-hmm. So though I very much enjoyed the super duper on the nose opening literal train tracks panning over to her house at the very beginning of the movie. It's like, she's from the wrong side of the tracks. It's just like, there's no way. You might as well put a whole card on the screen that said that.
It's not a very subtle film.
No.
And also the fact, I know we said we weren't going to talk about the music, but you kind of have to about this. The film opens with the song the movie's based on, or gets its title from, Psychedelic Furs, Pretty in Pink. And it's perfect. Originally, the director wanted to do a score, and so they did two things. They put it together with the Psychedelic Furs song, and they put it together with a score. And little did Howard know, but John Hughes went, because Howard thought the Pretty in Pink song was too raw. And if you listen to the original version, which is the one that you can find on streaming services, it is a very raw sounding song. And so he had the Furs go back into the studio, re-record it, and that's the version that's used in the film. It's on the soundtrack, and in my personal opinion, is the better version.
I think it benefits from them having played it for a while up to that point.
All right, we're veering into soundtrack talk, you guys.
Yes. So we'll talk
about that.
Put a pin on that.
But yeah, very prominently used in the film. But I really do like back to her character though. So she's basically trying to kind of like hold her dad together, who has not done well since her mother left them. And basically, he only works part-time. She's trying to get him to go get a job, like a full-time job, and, like, wakes him up in the morning. She's basically, like, having to do all this stuff that, like, a teenager should not have to be doing, And even though, like, there are times where her, like, age shows, like, she's like, oh, yeah, this is still a teenager. For the most part, she's on the, would you consider this precocious, Like,
I don't know what that word means.
I don't know the actual like dictionary definition of precocious, but like it's like,
that word means.
Acts above their age. Let's see if I can get this word. Showing my
of a child having developed certain abilities or proclivities at an earlier age than usual.
Yeah. So I would say
50-cent word here. Man. Look at that.
Well, I was in my mid-20s before I learned that the word precocious, I'd heard said as precocious, but I'm pretty sure I would read it as precocious or something like that. So I was definitely reading it wrong.
Yeah, she's precocious.
Yeah.
She's a really interesting character, and she's played very well by Molly Ringwald. Like,
yeah,
she's balanced between having to be more mature than she should have to be, but she's also like, is like a teenager, like feels sad when they get picked on, and like wants to go to prom, and has all of those more like childish,
age appropriate. I mean,
age appropriate. Not even, I wouldn't even say childish, but those things that younger people experience and feel, and she does a really good job of portraying both of those in a movie that's ultimately like mostly just like a fun teen movie. It's not super heavy. I mean, there's that the most dramatic scene, I think, is when she's talking to her dad, Harry Dean Stanton, and they have that like big blow up about how he didn't go to the job interview, and she's like talking about why, and she's like, I don't know why she didn't stay. I don't know why she left us, but she's gone. Like, I've known this since I was 14.
Yeah. I mean, just a little side note. I imagine that the job that Harry Dean Stanton was going to interview for was the Repo Man job.
I wanted to make that joke. It's like, because he comes back and says that he got a job, but he's like, he won't tell her what it is. And like, he's repoing cars at night.
Yeah, he was driving around with an alien in the trunk.
That scene is a spectacular scene, I think. It shows the just tremendous acting ability of both Molly Ringwald and Harry Dean Stanton. And you're right, the fact that she is, especially for someone in the 1980s and someone who is, an 18-year-old, the emotional maturity that is shown there in that scene is pretty incredible. Also, this film, I can't remember if I mentioned this already, but this film was written for Molly Ringwald. Specifically, John Hughes wrote this for her, and after having worked with her in 2 other films. So it was, I think he when he wrote it, he had her sensibilities in mind, and they had considered some other people. The studio wanted to consider a few other people, but eventually I think it just came down to either the director or John Hughes were like, no, it's Molly Ringwald.
Yeah.
That's what's happening.
They considered a lot of people, actually. Jennifer Beals turned down the role. So that she was actually offered. Jodie Foster, Sarah Jessica Parker, Tatum O'Neal, and Lori Loughlin were all considered.
These are weird choices. They would have changed like the characters dramatically.
None of them would have been the right.
No, I don't think so.
Voice.
Yeah, I don't pick any of those as, I can't imagine any of those actors being people who would have been at a punk club.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Like, none of them come off as artsy fartsy.
Right.
And even
Jodie Foster. Jodie Foster would.
She would be a nerd.
Punk club character, but she wouldn't be this character at a punk club.
Yeah. No. If you remade this movie now and you had someone who was like a Jodie Foster today, you could do this and make the character gay, and it would work. And also, the character would probably be just tougher, because not that Molly Ringwald, the way she portrayed it, wasn't tough, but Jodie Foster has a toughness to her. Like, you firmly believe that in any situation, she will kick whoever's ass is in front of her without breaking a sweat. She will fuck you up.
Yeah, have you seen The Brave One?
I don't know if I have.
No one's seen The Brave One.
I was going to say.
So I was going to say her age-appropriate behavior really shows with her relationship with Andrew McCarthy. Like, I think that relationship, like, she's flirty. They're trying to make jokes. She's not as serious. Like, she kind of gets to, like, be a young adult in love with that portion of the movie.
She's caught off guard more often with his character. I feel like there are moments where she doesn't respond to things that he says the way that she responds to other characters. She's much more reserved when she's talking to him at first.
Well, because those other characters don't have Andrew McCarthy's award-winning smile there. He uses that smile as a weapon. Like, he tries to use it like, hey, it's fine, it's cool, he tries to get out of all of his, mistakes by just being like, I'm Andrew McCarthy,
He does the little laugh and the smile, and he like turns his head away.
Yep, that's it. Every time.
Constantly.
I mean, he was dreamy.
I get it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting relationship between the two of them, and I especially love the computer graphic thing where the computers were networked together, and he did this very. I'm actually very curious how they actually made that work in 1986. Like, how much money did that cost them to get a computer programmer to put that little bit together?
My guess, it wasn't a computer program. It was literally illustrated that way, and that's a TV screen, not an actual computer screen.
It might have been.
Yeah.
That would be easier
than actually programming.
Than to program a computer to do that. Yeah.
Yes.
Because I was like, is he a hacker? How did he do this? Is he in War Games?
Yeah. I definitely said out loud, that's not how computers work. That was a very unbelievable scene.
Well, it's unbelievable now. In 1986, it was very believable because we didn't know what the hell computers did.
No.
We didn't have computers in our houses. Are you freaking kidding me? No one knew.
Yeah.
Everyone was like, whoa, that's awesome. I want to do that.
I also like that, like, he's in the library. I guess it's the library that they're in, or computer lab. He's in there. He stands up, like, behind the computer, and they're like, they look at each other. They don't talk to each other because it's like 2 scenes later together. She says, I like your little computer trick. I was like, you didn't talk about that? Like, immediately after he did that? Like, and then you had another scene between then and this scene too. It was weird. I was like, I think this is a continuity error.
Well, that was in the time when you didn't really talk in a library.
True.
So that's the other thing too, when you talk about these films. And actually, I've talked with a coworker who is, her husband's my age, but she is, I think, in her 30s, and they've rewatched a bunch of 80s films, and it's so fascinating hearing her talk about them through kind of modern eyes. Because to me, I literally grew up in this world. I remember what 1986 was like. And you look at this now, and it's so different. And I wonder, as younger gents than me, how does that aspect of the film? Is there things that it's just such a different world that it takes you out of it? Does it as a movie? Does it something that speaks to you in any way?
It doesn't seem too otherworldly to me, and I think that's probably because we watched a lot of 80s movies as kids.
Yeah,
that it was very normal to just see. And we also didn't have a computer until like 99 or 2000 or something like that. I mean, we had an old Mac computer that we like typed on and would print things, but
like our library had like a DOS computer when I was a kid, the green text. So like a lot of that stuff. It's funny.
A lot of the technology was still very, very common.
So this is a random like aside, but at work, in my department, we're in a little office area upstairs, and occasionally on breaks, somebody will pull up like some like trivia questions, and like I like know the answer to a lot of stuff that the rest of the people in my like department don't, including like another coworker of mine who's like literally a year younger than me, and I was like answering like question after question after question. It was all pop culture stuff too, and after I answered some dumb question, she was like, how old are you? I'm like, I'm only a year older than you. I just watched a bunch of old stuff. Like,
yeah. And we watched a lot of old stuff in general.
Right.
It's like, yeah, our pop culture was, a lot of the media that we consumed when we were younger was not as current pop culture as the average person our age.
Yeah. I don't know. I didn't know anyone at the time at like age 15, 16 who was watching like Red Skelton and Laurel and Hardy, like, videos. So
I also watch old commercials for like fun, like every day.
Yeah.
Like almost literally every day.
Old commercials were a trip.
I put in the date.
Yep.
Commercials, and I watch compilations of.
He does it to wake up. I do it to go to bed.
Yeah. I sit and drink my coffee for like an hour and watch old commercials.
I think one other thing about this film that is, I don't know if lost is the right word, but this is, pre-Nirvana. So this is where, other than a few one-hit wonders here and there, the whole culture within, half of the characters in this movie was still a completely underground culture. And it was the fact that it was explored in the way that it was and explored relatively accurately, I think was pretty cool.
That is one of the things that is more unusual to me when it comes up in 80s movies, is the way that alternative music culture is not more familiar to the average person. It was still really weird. That's something that I'm not used to, because I'm used to post Nirvana, grunge, post hair metal, and like punk being something that gets played on the radio.
Yeah, that was
pretty
definitely
commonly. So
definitely not this era. I mean, you had things like, Madness had their hit with Our House. You had Dexy's Midnight Runner had their hit. So there were artists that had crossover hits, but they were, few and far between, and almost all of them were one-hit wonders. OMD from this movie had a gigantic hit, and that ended up being a one-hit wonder for them. So it was, I don't know, it's such a, to me, that's really fascinating as someone who was in the scene when Nirvana happened. And there were certain things that, we all knew Pretty in Pink. And I'll bring this up on the soundtrack episode, but there were, certain records you were kind of expected, everyone was expected to have. And remind me to bring that up, to mention what some of those were when we talk about the actual music of the film on the main episode.
Eagles' greatest hits.
No. No, fuck.
The Miller
I fucking
Band's
hate the
greatest
Eagles. Oh my God.
You
Quick
and the
side-
Big Lebowski.
Oh, I just, I like Don
I
Henley.
love them. I don't love them. I like them.
I like Don Henley. I like Glenn Frey. Their solo stuff's not bad. You get those four fuckers together, and it's nails on a chalkboard. Heck, I like those country covers. When that country covers album that came out in the 90s, Travis Tritt did, Going Down the Road, Trying to Loosen My Load. It's got Coleman Francis on my mind. If you can tell me what that's a reference to, that's a Mystery Science Theater 3000 right there. Anyway, that's great. I just don't like those guys together playing their music. It's Hotel California, garbage. It's not moves like Jagger bad, but it's bad.
I don't like the Eagles, and I should like the Eagles because of the kind of music a lot of the music that I do like. I watched the Eagles documentary. Man, I fucking hate the Eagles. That was like pouring cement on my hatred. It was just like
We should
locked
do that.
in.
We should
These
do that
guys
documentary.
suck. I can't watch it again. I love Joe Walsh though, but he wasn't.
He's not
he was
an original.
So late. Yeah, he's not an original member. We're not talking about the Eagles.
Nope. So were there any scenes that really jump out to you guys?
Oh, excuse me. Yeah, there's like the most famous. Okay, in my mind, the most famous scene in the movie is the Ducky lip syncing to Otis Redding. Is that accurate as saying that's the most well-known scene in the movie?
It's probably the most iconic scene. I don't know if
Yeah.
it's the most well-known, but yeah, God, I love that. I can't imagine. Can you imagine Robert Downey Jr. doing that? No, it would have been,
No.
No.
I
John
can't
Cryer-
I mean, I
Imagine-
can imagine him doing it, but I don't want to see it. Because the way he would do it, it wouldn't be good.
And I can imagine Anthony Michael Hall doing it, because doesn't he do something similar to that in
Yeah.
Breakfast Club?
I mean, there's a whole dance scene in the
There's the
Breakfast
whole
Club.
Yeah.
dance sequence in Breakfast Club. Yeah.
So I can imagine him doing it because we've already seen him dancing.
Yeah, but his dancing is not. He does not have the soul that John Cryer has. John Cryer actually has some good moves, and I'm just amazed. I'm pretty sure he was wearing Chuck Taylors during that, and when he did that slide across the floor, I'm like, how does anyone get sliding on Chuck Taylors? I ever tried to do that in
slide?
Chucks? No, they you go flying on your face. But yeah, that's a tremendous scene.
we should
yeah.
talk about John Cryer.
Yeah, I was going to say, we should talk about Ducky and John Cryer and all that.
First scene that his character comes in, I think I said, that boy is gay. I truly believe that.
Funny you said that. Molly Ringwald thought of that character as gay. Like, she played her character against him with that in mind. But John Cryer did not play his character that way. He did not think that.
Well, I don't know what John Cryer thought he was doing.
Okay, so that's
It's so heavily coded as like, he's just the gay best friend character. Like, he is the template of the gay best friend character in a teen movie.
Yeah.
In this movie. Like, I don't know how you could think he's anything else. It's to the point, like, it really takes me out of that entire like plot device of him being like I've been her friend for years. Like, it's believable to see him hitting on girls all the time and trying to be like smooth and because that's I feel like that's a pretty typical like closeted gay guy in the 80s thing to do, to be like try to be a ladies man, because it holds that it keeps that defense up, and maybe even is like wrapped up in like self-denial. But his whole like being in love with his best friend and like the friend zoning, like that stuff was so hard to really take.
Oh, okay. I have never, and I'm someone who has pretty darn good gaydar. Can you still say that, actually? Am I going to get canceled? But as someone who generally can pick up that stuff pretty well, I have never once thought of Ducky's character as being gay. I mean, I actually, for many years, I've so identified with his character. I never had that great hair. I never had that great style. So I was never that cool or flamboyant or anything. Well, actually, I'm pretty flamboyant at times. but yeah, I never. Wow, I'm gonna have to ponder on this.
So I'm gonna kind of straddle the line between the two. So the first initial scene, that's where I get it. I go, this is gay. This character's gay. And then as it kind of progresses, I'm like, no, he's just not typically masculine, like, performing gendered norms, because I feel like in all of those scenes where he is like, he's talking to her dad and he's talking to Annie Potts, like all these scenes, like he very much is like, he's just not like, I'm a guy, like I'm a tough dude,
Yeah. I mean, and I certainly appreciate to see a significant romantic lead in a film be portrayed as not typically masculine.
Mm-hmm. I think what you were saying though is
the impression was just so strong in his first few scenes, and then in a lot of other reinforced throughout with just like the consistency of his characterization, that it was just like having to switch like mentally.
So what I was going to say is, I think the reason why you may also think that too is because the gay best friend character was very much just modeled off of this character. Yeah. So you've got years of pop culture, character portrayals and shorthand being burnt into your So you're, well, that's how I read that character. But also Molly Ringwald read it that way too at the time. So I don't know.
Huh. She said that his character. I saw something that his character was almost based on her friend, like one of her best friends, which maybe that's misattributed, and she was just saying that she felt like he was similar to, but
also I have the experience of seeing John Cryer on 2.5 Men, so like, I know what of that role is just John Cryer versus
I have luckily never seen that show, so this is fascinating. I never would have pegged Ducky as being the prototypical gay best friend or like the archetype for that. I just because this predates the gay best friend by many years.
Yeah, you don't start to see that until like mid to late 90s, really, in teen movies.
In a way, it's almost, and I doubt that John Hughes was going for this or pulling from this source, but it's that challenging of traditional masculinity that bands like 7 Seconds did from like day one, and that kind of thing that is now certainly far more accepted and far more represented in things. But it was different. And the scene where he runs into the guy and mouths off to him. And then tries to talk about stock options or something before he gets thrown into the women's restroom, which the part where he's like, "You got a candy machine in here?
You got doors on the stall."
Doors on the stall.
Which, I mean, so like reading his character that way gives more potency into the way that I felt like the way that he interacts with the other masculine characters, the other male characters, who are all like preppy, like yuppie.
They're preppy or jocks,
or jocks.
The jocks don't have talking lines, but they're there,
Yeah, and those scenes are like, you can definitely reading his character as gay, you can definitely sense the homophobia in the way that he probably interacts with all of the men at his school, which, regardless of whether or not the character is gay, like not being traditionally masculine, like, I guess.
He was definitely called the slur for gay people, which does show up in the movie, and it's not aimed at him. It's thrown at Andrew McCarthy, which
that was an interesting.
I wanted to talk about that though. Like, so we all know that 16 Candles did not age well. Like, that's the one that's just like, Jesus Christ, what did they do in this movie? Like, who thought this was okay at the time? Even.
I'm not going to lie, though, at the time, that shit was hilarious. Oh, my God. And I know I'm going to hell for many reasons. But one is for probably still thinking Long Duck Dong was hysterical. But I see that through, like, 11-year-old eyes. I'm sorry.
Yeah. It's imprinted on you.
Yes, it really is. But, yeah, no, it's so... so here's... I think I sense where you're going, Justin, but this begs a question. Is, of the teen John Hughes movies, is Pretty in Pink the least problematic?
That was my whole thing I was going with. I think it's the least problematic because the times that there's really only 2 lines in the movie that I was like, they probably wouldn't say that anymore. But also, a real life teen would say that. Like, there's an F-bomb in here and there's an R-bomb in here. And 16, 17, 18-year-olds would use those words. So,
yeah.
To me, it's the least problematic. It's also not because it's only in those 2 scenes. It's not like the whole movie, like Breakfast Club, that uses it a lot more because of Bender. Like, he throws it around a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And even Emilio Estevez, I think, throws it around too. Like, that's their characters too. I also can see that because they're the artsy kids, they're into the punk stuff. They're not throwing that word around themselves. So,
right, yeah,
it makes sense why it doesn't show up as much.
The person who uses the F word, and that's the one that it means bundle of sticks, for those who were wondering. That is played by that's said by the ultra, for lack of a better term, bitchy, blonde chick who is just the bane of Andy's existence. That scene where, so if you haven't seen the movie, Andrew McCarthy's character takes Molly Ringwald's character to a party. First of all, not a good choice.
Whew,
and
awful.
It's hedonistic 80s party good times in Richville. And so he's like, let's go upstairs. And she looks at him like, are you fucking kidding me? And she has this line, I'm not here to get you off. And I'm like, that's brilliant. But so to show he's not there to do anything shenanigan wise, he puts his hands in his pockets, and literally this guy wears like blazers all the time, like Don Johnson-esque blazers. And he's not the only one. So many people in this movie wear these things. But he picks up like a 12-pack of beer cans and holds them, does the whole gimmick where you hold it between your elbow and your ribs, and then picks up a bag of pretzels, because these are just randomly sitting on tables, and in his mouth. And they go upstairs to a bedroom, to which they find Steph in a robe and boxers. And then... what's her face? Benny. Comes out of the bathroom, and it looks like they probably just banged and were going to bang again at some point. And that's when she notices Molly Ringwald and Andrew McCarthy there, she just is not a happy camper. And it's a well acted scene, but it really does kind of draw this interesting line of where Blaine's character doesn't seem like a complete a-hole. But he obviously has grown up with a bunch of people who have become complete a-holes. And Andy is so incredibly uncomfortable but even before they get there, you can tell her skin is crawling.
Before they even leave. Like, she's like, a party, really?
Yeah.
Your friends? She didn't want to go in the first place.
No. And of course, there's that great line, you want to go home and change? I already did. So it's so uncomfortable, but yes, you're absolutely right. It's completely teenager, and it's things that teenagers would say to this day.
Yeah.
Having been around teenagers at my job, I have heard both the R and the F words dropped on a fairly regular basis.
I've heard them from adults I work with, so.
Well, that's different. That's one of those baked in generational things.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I used the R word for years. And it was in fact, it was my wife. I said it one day, and she's like, you shouldn't say that anymore. And I thought about it. I was like, oh, That and Glee. Not gonna lie, Glee taught me that the R word is bad. So I was like, okay, that's I learned.
I've definitely had to have that conversation with other friends too. I'm like, hey, don't say that word anymore.
Yeah.
Like, really? And they're like, oh, okay. You know, like they get it. They're just like, yeah, I guess that's true.
Yeah, that one.
That one's still hard to get rid of, honestly.
That one's surprising. It'll pop up and you're like, whoa.
Yeah.
Huh.
I think the interesting thing about that word is now how much when you do hear it, it's the glass breaking moment. Once you kind of become aware of the problems with that word and why it is so unkind to say, and then when you start to hear it, it's like, ugh. You have at least I do. I have a visceral reaction. I have a coworker who, when she gets really upset, she will say it. And I actually talked to my boss about pulling her aside and saying, hey, you really need to not say this word. At the very least, do not say this on the floor around customers or around other members of staff within the organization, because you don't want the wrong person to hear this, hear you saying this, because this could end badly for you.
Right. Like the type of person who could make it a really big problem for you if they hear you say it, you know?
Yeah. So since we talked about a scene with Blaine's character, what are your thoughts on him?
He, to me, feels the most like a teenager out of all of them. So the way I thought of him was, he is this, like, he means well, and I think at his core he is a good person, but because he's come up with all these other rich kids and all these jerks, like, he sees it, like, this when they go to the party, he's like, oh, my friends are assholes. Like, he says it, I think.
He sees that the culture that he's been a part of for so long, he sees it through someone else's eyes, and it's like, oh, I didn't think about this.
Yeah, he's well-meaning, but he makes a dumb mistake of bringing her there. But then, I think he turns into a chicken shit.
Yeah. No, he does. He does. He caves in.
He caves in the scene. He says, I want this to work. It has to work. Well, let's make this work. And then, like, they just cut to his face, and he's like, he's already bailed. How did he do that so quickly?
Because there were a few scenes before where Steph's character was putting that hint in his head about your parents are not going to go for this. And I think there was a line about, I've seen your mom tear into you. She's vicious. But that's also very true to a teenager. The one thing I think I like about his character, and also another side note, you talk about a character who is not traditionally masculine. Mm-hmm. Yeah. He is not. But he actually shows emotional growth. He does grow as a character. He evolves. And there's that scene after they go to the party, they go to the club, which I want to actually just talk about the club here in a second. But they go to the club where all the freaks hang out. And a couple great bands that they play. One of them is actually a band called the Rave Ups. You can find their stuff on streaming services. But they go to this club, and he gets to experience what all of those, basically Andy and all of her friends experience at school and everywhere else. And you can tell he's starting to have this realization, like, oh shit, this sucks. Yeah. It takes him a while to really deal with it all and process it, which is also pretty realistic. You're not going to be in a scene, in a situation that immediately go, oh, this is screwed up. I need to change the way I behave right this second. That does not happen. And if you expect someone to do that, you don't understand how the mind works. Right. So I think he's just an interesting character.
I think his character does progress and grow and has perceptions challenged and, like, in a realistic way, but I do think the movie does not the best job of portraying it happening, because I feel like after they split and then she goes to the prom by herself and then they get back together, which this probably has a lot to do with the fact that the ending of the movie was reshot. Mm-hmm. It's very sudden that he's changed. Like I think all of his realization happens off screen,
And there's some kind of, not montage moments, but there are moments where you see him in the background. Actually, I guess would be considered montage, where everyone's getting ready for the prom, and you see him sitting there pensively drinking coffee or whatever.
Yeah.
And man, why are all these guys dressed like they're, going to business meetings?
All the time. They're all wearing blazers all the time.
Yes. But I think that you're right. There is a very dramatic shift, and I do want to talk about the ending, which I think we should probably get to soon. But what did you think of the club that they had?
I thought it was really
the punk
cool.
club?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought the punk club was awesome. It was
Bands
like
were really cool.
It was like dingy. It was dingy in the way that like I've been to punk clubs like that, maybe not with as cool lighting, but also like they didn't do that thing where it's like a dangerous club, like, because Andy's hanging out there, so like naturally it's going to be a little bit, it's a cool place to hang out. Yeah, I really liked it, and I really liked the first band that we see play. They play that song Rudy, and
yes,
it's like a neo ska sort of song, and I have notes about that, which we can talk about on the soundtrack episode if we ever get to it.
Yeah, no, we will. The one thing I like is that that portrayal does not go into all of the stereotypes in the 80s that you had about punks, about them being dangerous and everything, like you said. It was just a bunch of weird kids hanging out together, and they're really not behaving any differently than the rich kids did when they hung out together, talk, drink, they're less hedonistic, which may or may not be that realistic, because, you get alcohol involved and people just act stupid. But I always loved that whole vibe in those scenes in the club. And of course, the scene where Ducky plants one on Iona and I love that he immediately apologizes.
Yeah.
And then her just look of shock, like what just happened, and then her admitting later that like his kiss would like set her on fire was hysterical.
I love Iona. Like that character is so good throughout the whole movie.
Is she the heart of the movie?
She's I don't know, what would you call that type of her and Harry Dean Stanton are kind of this like the guiding light of the movie almost. I don't know how it's you describe.
They're the parental figures. Harry Dean Stanton is her literal dad, but Annie Potts, Iona's character, is he's kind of a surrogate mother, I feel like, or almost an older sister kind of character.
I was trying to figure out how old she's supposed to be in the movie.
She's supposed to be like 15 years older than Annie, I think is what she says.
Does she say that? Okay. So I was trying to figure out in her prom dress and her like beehive hairdo, I was like, it's too late for that. Like for her to have been in high school and have a beehive I figured out it was either 69 or 70. I was like, I don't know. That may be too late, but maybe she grew up in like a rural or like a more not as city focused area.
I think. Go ahead.
The geography of this movie is.
Where is this movie taking place? Like, I know where it's shot.
It has to take place in a major city because she lives in Chinatown.
Yeah, she does. It's shot in L.A.
Yeah, it's a Chicago suburb is where it takes place.
It's a John Hughes movie, so it's the Chicago suburbs.
Yeah, I think
she talks about doing drugs in the 60s, and then, like, she's kind of a punk. She was kind of a hippie, I think.
Maybe she's supposed to be older.
Yeah, I always kind of thought she graduated high school in the early to mid 60s. She was, because the thing that I think we forget, especially now in 2022, is how close the 1980s were to the 1950s.
Yeah.
It's not that far away.
I figured she had to be playing older because I looked her up, and like at the time when the movie was shot, she was like 33.
Yeah.
So if she was like 18 or 17, it'd been 69 or 70. So I was like, she must be playing like 37 or something like that, you know?
Yeah, I always assumed that she would be like my parents' age. My parents were born in 45. Mm-hmm. So I just assumed that she was around that age. Because that would have been, 30-something was the big thing in the mid-'80s, and that's when baby boomers, they're about age-ish, range-ish was getting there.
Right. when she does her little yuppie turn with Terrence and she's like singing to the Copacabana, like that's where I was like, she's supposed to be older than she actually
Yeah,
is.
she is.
And her hair.
I would say like 40 is probably more realistic.
She's wearing the Sia wig.
That scene.
This is so
Oh,
great.
yeah.
I loved her apartment.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything about she's one of my favorite characters in this movie. Everything about
Yeah.
her was fantastic. But speaking of wigs, we should probably talk about the prom scene.
Yeah, this should probably be like our push to wrap this up. So, you want to start with the prom scene?
So, real quick, for one, it was reshot. So they originally shoot the film, and Molly Ringwald's character ends up with Ducky, and they did a screening of it, and the audience literally booed, and they were like, "Oh fuck, we need to change this," and so they called everyone back in. And at this point, Andrew McCarthy was doing a play on Broadway. He'd lost a bunch of weight and shaved his head. So if you're watching the scene, you're like, why the fuck does his hair look so different? It's because it was a terrible wig.
Yeah.
He also, in that scene, I'm like, this was shot way later because he just looked different in general. Yeah. Like his face didn't even look the same.
And I didn't know that at the time, like for years, until I think I was watching the bonus features on the DVD. I did not realize that there had been another scene, because one of the things that urban legend as it goes is that John Hughes made Some Kind of Wonderful as a make good for the ending of Pretty in Pink, for the fact that she ends up with Blaine. They fix that problem in Some Kind of Wonderful, because the two nerdy characters end up together, which that's also a very good movie. I don't know it near as well, but it's so she makes her dress. She takes Iona's dress and this dress her dad got her, and makes a pretty dope ass dress, to be honest. I mean, that was a cool looking dress. Shows up at the prom, and Ducky's there looking very suave.
Yeah, his outfit's great too.
It is.
Yeah.
It's like a green suit.
And the bolo tie. I love bolo ties. I tried to wear those bolo ties at a point in my life. I don't think I could pull that off now. But yeah, I love the way the film ends. They go in there, and Steph is drunk, and I love that part when he's talking to people and he sees Ducky and Andy walk in, and he's immediately scanning the room. He's like, where's Blaine? Where's Blaine? And then he beelines it for Blaine. He's like, I'm going to mess with this guy. And that's when kind of Blaine finally puts everything together, and he's like, you've been trying to hit this for years, and she thinks you're crap. Mm-hmm. I love that whole moment. And even the part where the callback to the earlier scene where Blaine tries to shake hands with Ducky, and Ducky won't shake his hand. And then when they meet in a club, and then he puts out his hand at the prom to shake Ducky's hand, and Ducky finally shakes his hand after a little bit of grandstanding. But I will admit, watching the scene, the moment where he tells her that he loves her, spoiler alert, that did sit a little weird with me. Yeah. But then I'm like, yeah, but you're at 18, man. You fall in love hard and fast. So yeah, I could forgive that.
And he's also been shown to repeatedly make dumb mistakes.
Very much so.
And say things without thinking. So
yes.
it's not too out of character for him to profess his love to someone that he really just has a maybe strong infatuation with. But I do think it is very abrupt because of how they changed. They had to basically cram it in at the end of the movie, because that whole scene, because have you watched, is there an existing cut of the original version of the film?
It's not that I know of, and the DVD that I have does not have the original ending on it. So original,
they must have like burned it.
Yeah.
When they recut it. Yeah,
I didn't see anything about like the original cut, because I would like to see how it plays out differently.
Because there's not much movie left.
Yeah.
Like them showing, like I would see it being that they both show up at the prom. She decides to go to the prom by herself, and then Ducky shows up, and then like then they have like a reconciliation, and she decides to go out with him. Like that's how I would see that playing out in the original movie. But there's really not much left.
I wonder if he was even in the original, like Andrew McCarthy was even in the original final scene.
He was. So they did show some footage of it being shot in the bonus features on the DVD, and there's the moment where he walks up and basically apologizes, but then what ends up happening is Ducky and Andy go off and start dancing, and the dance floor kind of parts like the Red Sea for them. So it's like fucking Moses and his girlfriend are coming in, and they're going to do their dance. But that's all they showed. They didn't actually show the footage. So the thing, I don't think that that whole idea, well, in one way it's like, yes, Ducky should get the love of his life, but she never saw him that way. And I don't think seeing him in a great suit is automatically going to make her go, you know what? After all these years, I think I do finally want to bone this guy.
His character is really frustrating to me because he never expresses his interest in her in the ways that he should, if that's what he really wants, but then feels very entitled to her when he does. Like, he doesn't actually ask her out, but then he shows up at the record store at the end of her shift expecting her to go out with him, and then he's like mad that she's not going out with him, that she's going out with someone else. And it's like, she didn't actually agree to that. She repeatedly told you, no, I'm not gonna hang out with you tonight.
So whenever I think of the concept of like friend zoning, where that became like a hot button topic on Tumblr circa 2010, this is that character. He never made I would say she is either completely oblivious or she fully knows that he has a crush on her, because he clearly does. No one acts that way, and it's not obvious that that's what they want. You know what they mean.
They talk about. I don't know. She talks about knowing him since they're kids. I'm assuming this is a preteen friendship. Mm-hmm. That they've been friends for so long, for him to never really act on it, because the way that he's flirty and with her is it's the way that he seems to be flirty with every girl that he interacts with in the movie, and he's not actually pursuing any of those other women. He's just being I don't know, flirty and fun.
So the interesting thing is I 100% identified with Ducky's character in this, because there is definitely, this is someone who has serious self-esteem issues, and as a known self-loather, I can understand. And it's one of those things where you can care about someone, or even you think you love someone deeply, but you are so terrified of trying to say anything that your fear stops you. So for me, I was like, this is 100% realistic, especially for something in the 80s. But yeah, it's like, well, dum-dum, you should have said something, duh. But it's also in the moment when you're that young, when you have, so little emotional maturity, when you probably don't have good role models, you probably hate yourself. He even talks about it. He's like, would I dress like this if there's some comment. So he definitely does not like himself. So that is not going to translate into, I'm going to ask this chick out. And ironically though, that is not going to translate into someone that is going to be attractive to a potential partner, unless of course you're Christy Swanson and you see him in a suit and you're like, hubba hubba.
She must have been like, I don't go to this school. I'm just here. I got invited. Doesn't know him.
His character is, it's believable in the whole pining for someone that you like, that's totally believable in his character. It's simply not believable to me that they would actually wind up together though.
Agreed.
So that was my thing. He was a jerk about the whole thing. And I get it. He was upset for someone he's been pining over for years, and he's upset about it. But he also he was such a jerk about it that it's like she's not gonna come back to him. Like, they might be able to stay friends later, but she doesn't see him as a romantic partner. Clearly didn't in the first place anyway. Right. And he was such a jerk about it. Apparently, like, people now retroactively want the original ending. Like, it's a weird, like, there's been like a turning of like the feelings on that movie and saying that she should wind up with Ducky. But I honestly think the actual best ending is she winds up with neither one of them.
Oh yeah.
Well, which is kind of what happens. I know they do get together and in the end, but I think it's very easy to read that scene, them getting together, as being like they end up breaking up like 2 years later.
Oh yeah, she doesn't marry him.
She doesn't marry him. It's not. They're not truly in love. It's not a fairy tale ending.
Yeah.
But you do kind of get that satisfaction of like her ultimately not being with either of them in the way that she decides to go to prom for herself.
Yeah.
In that self-assurance and being like, I'm going to go and I'm going to have fun. This is what I want to do. And I don't need a man to make this an important night in my life.
Yeah.
My teenage life or whatever.
Yeah.
So like,
and that was just important to her, I think, to stand up to, and she even says this to her dad. She's going to show them that they didn't win. They didn't beat her. But I mean, you look at the film and who is a more likable character, Ducky or Blaine? And the answer is Ducky. If you walk away from this film and you're like, no, I think Blaine's my favorite one, I'm going to be like, really?
No, Blaine's the one with the least character out of it. Like, personality-wise, he's like the blandest out of all of them to me.
Oh yeah, he's milquetoast. It's
He's just like, he's got that cute little smile, that's it. But like, it's not... Ducky can be grating, and I would have been very annoyed by a Ducky if I had one in my life. I think I wouldn't have been a bully. I'd probably still been a friend with him, but I also just be like, I like Ducky and all, but God, sometimes I just wish he would calm down like that. Yeah. That's how I would feel with Ducky.
Ducky is the friend that gets on your nerves sometimes that you deep down love, but they're just like, I can't deal with you right now.
So,
but ultimately, I would want to be friends with Ducky.
Yeah. Just you don't want to spend all your time with him.
Blaine. But yeah, like, see, the thing that Blaine has going for him is that he is genuinely apologetic when he realizes that he's done wrong. And he shows that earlier in his characterization.
As soon as they get to the party, you can see it on his face that it's like, oh, I have made a huge mistake. Like, this was not the best idea.
And then he's like, he does it and like, he's apologetic and is like then disarming and charming and like isn't like, he doesn't go on any kind of like big tirades or anything like that.
Yeah,
he handles, and he definitely does like the chicken shit thing and breaks up with her because he's like, oh, I don't want to embarrass myself to my cool rich friends.
I think family was the thing he was more concerned with.
Yeah, agreed.
I mean, Steph really lays it on later in the way that it definitely seems like which he's playing a game because he's just like, I can't have her, so I don't want you to have her either. But
like I said earlier, his character feels like he's in like a completely different movie. He has like very bad motivations and ulterior motive for everything he's doing.
Yeah, he's kind of evil.
Yeah,
I want to see him playing a character who looks and dresses like that now with like a big wig on.
Yeah.
Playing that character in like a crime movie.
Okay, that would be kind of cool.
The way that he's playing the character, which I guess he
could have. He has like 30 years of film, filmography.
He's probably done something like that.
His poor hair, though. You talk about a guy who went from having great hair to having not great hair. Bless his heart. So real quick before we do finish up on this, I do think that both Blaine and Ducky do show emotional growth because there's that at the very end, there is that moment where Ducky lets her go and he realizes I have to move on. And then one of the greatest moments in American cinema ever, when the aforementioned Christy Swanson, she is checking Ducky out and he sees her and he's like, moi? And then he looks directly in the camera and walks off toward her. I mark out for that scene. I pop for that so hard every single time. And they discussed it. Apparently they discussed it, and they were like, oh, why not? Let's give it a shot. And if it doesn't work, we won't use it. I think that is one of the greatest moments because it's just so much fun.
Why did John Cryer disappear after Pretty in Pink and not reappear until 2.5 Men? I mean, I'm sure he did stuff in that time period, but like nothing notable, right? I feel like I'd never seen that man before when when I saw 2.5 Men for the first time. Oh, he's in Superman 4.
Yeah,
that's what
I forgot he's in that. Yeah, it's probably that is what hurt his career more than anything. Like, oh, you're in that turd? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, he's been doing stuff, it looks like almost every year or every couple of years, but none of it's big at all. Yeah, I think
he had auditioned for Chandler in Friends.
That'd been a very different role. He was on an episode of The Outer Limits in 1996. Yeah. He didn't really...
He really doesn't have anything, though.
He didn't land until... Like, he's just got
there's
one off.
Nothing significant.
Until you hit 2.5 Men.
He was in 2 episodes of Hannah Montana. Wow.
Final thoughts on Pretty in Pink before we move over to the soundtrack, I guess. How's it hold up as a rewatch?
For me personally, I actually watched it twice before in preparation for this. To me, it holds up great, but I also have 30 plus years with it. I grew up with it. I was kind of part of that a few years later, but I was part of that scene, and so for me, it's a very important part of my life as far as pop culture is concerned. I really I don't know what someone like. What does a Zoomer think if like my kids watch this movie? I'm wondering, what are they going to get out of it? How much of this is going to make sense? I think because it's a fairly universal story and not as completely tied to technology of the day. I mean, it is, but it's also not in a way, if that makes sense. I think it might translate better than some other movies. And and you don't have like super racist characters or sexual assault going on. I don't know. I cannot answer that question. What do you guys think? I really want to know what y'all think. Does this hold up?
I mean, having never seen it before, and not being particularly fond of a lot of the 80s teen comedies.
Oh yeah, Dylan, you were gonna say hot take alert. Do the hot take.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, this is better than Breakfast Club. Yeah, that's my hot take, which maybe is not as big of it's not a nuclear take, but...
Well, you're also like, you don't like Breakfast Club.
I don't like Breakfast Club.
It's different than saying one is better than the other, but you outright don't like Breakfast Club. I'll
rewatch. I don't ever really need to see Breakfast Club again.
I'm actually not surprised that you don't like the Breakfast Club.
I love the Breakfast Club, problems and all, and it's probably my favorite. If we're going with the Molly Ringwald 3 Brat Pack movies, Breakfast Club's probably my favorite. Pretty in Pink may have aged the best, though.
Oh, I think that goes without saying. So for me, the Breakfast Club is special to me in a different way, in that my brother was John Bender. My brother is that 80s metal kid who did, it still does, drugs. And
the burnout.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So that was so spot on to me because it just reminds me so much of my brother. But I think, I don't know. The fact, Dylan, that you think Pretty in Pink is a better movie than The Breakfast Club, I can't say that you're wrong. I mean, I think it actually probably is a better film, certainly through 21st century eyes. It is a movie that you can hand to someone now and watch without having to really say, okay, here's your caveats for this film.
Yeah.
I mean,
we've previously talked about the movie Repo Man, which features many slurs.
Yeah.
And is very problematic in a lot of ways. And I thought it was very fun and enjoyable to watch and something that I'll revisit. So that's not, I just don't like Breakfast Club. I think I just ultimately don't like the characters in the story that much. more so than like the things that I find problematic about it. But that being said, like, yeah, for this movie being those kinds of characters and that kind of movie, it has the nice perk of being something that has aged well as in terms of like political correctness. But
I think we should wrap up here because we've gone almost 2 hours talking about Pretty in Pink, the movie.
Sorry, guys.
And we need to do a soundtrack too. So, no, we're all guilty here. This isn't just.
We all had a lot of asides.
But I think we'll wrap up the Patreon here. And then thank you, patrons, everyone, for listening. Thank you, Dave, for being part of the Patreon episode.
It's my pleasure.
And we'll see you on the main show.